Children are dying, Kim. What's up, rebels? My name's Willy.
My name's Leo.
I'm from the UK.
I'm from the US.
We are engaged.
We are queer.
And we out here. Today, we are going to be reacting to Should Minors Transition. We've been waiting to watch this for a long time, but we've been so busy, so this is our first watch. We're super excited, and also Leo's trans, so it'd be great to have the perspective of someone who's trans and someone who is cis.
Yeah.
So without further ado,
let's get into it. Gay agenda. Gay agenda.
Antidepressants weren't working. We'd been to every single therapist and nothing was touching it until we used he, him pronouns.
I don't even know where to start here. Sex is not assigned at birth, it's established at conception. We have to get to biology here.
Today we're bringing a new version of Middle Ground. We'll be exploring the topic, should minors be allowed to medically transition? We'll be introducing an undecided group and they'll be listening to
Can I just say, who is arguing that sex can be changed? Nobody's arguing that sex can be changed. We're arguing that gender can be changed. Gender is a social construct. Sex is biology.
Yeah.
Leo isn't telling anyone he's a biological male.
And I mean, he actually is wrong because at the point of conception, you don't have sex characteristics.
Really?
The sperm meets the egg.
Yeah, that's true.
Conception.
That's true. Do you know what mums? Can we Google it? 9 weeks.
Interesting. So 9 weeks, maybe not exactly at the point of conception.
transitioning has become a social media trend.
Absolutely agree. I mean, it is just skyrocketing the amount of children that you see falling into this, and we need to stop it.
Absolutely not. People said the same thing about people coming out being lesbian, gay, or bisexual as it got more normalized, as people became more accepting of like their children and things like that. They're like, everybody wants to be gay. Now social media is around, people my age, like we see other trans people, and being aware that that's something that's being accepted by other people makes you more comfortable.
I feel like, I mean, it's not shocking for a conservative to feel the opposite way, but I don't think it's become a trend. I think what's happened is there's become so much more visibility and openness, so people are feeling way more confident in being openly visible. So it's the whole social contagion of gender is ridiculous. If it worked that easily, I would be trans. And there's nothing about me that wants to be trans. Nothing. Like, I'm very happy with exactly who I am. And I'm very happy with who Leo is. We are two very different people. I don't experience what he experiences. Leo being around me doesn't just change that. You know, most of my friends are trans and it hasn't changed anything for me. Yeah. The only way that would happen is if you realize you are actually trans.
Yeah, First of all, I mean, this guy didn't even let him finish off the question before he jumped in. No, I don't like it. It's a bit much, man. You can calm it down. It's the first topic. We're on the first go, man.
I'd be told his granddaughter or something like, Granddad will be the first one to talk. I
won't be on the Jubilee.
Do you think it's a trend?
No, I think what's happening and why it seems that there's a trend is that we are seeing a peak of, like, you know, an uptake in the number of people and the number of younger people who are identifying as trans, non-binary, gender fluid, you know, so on and so on. And guys, it's not that it's a trend, as in people are just doing this because they think it's fun, because I'm gonna tell you a secret. Being trans, it's not always fun. There's a lot of things that go into that, and it's not something that someone just picks up randomly as like a little hobby or a little quirk.
Monday I'll go to pottery and Tuesday I'll be trans.
Yeah, literally, like, yeah, you have your knitting circle, you have your pottery class, and then you have your trans circle. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like you said, education is growing. You know, we're experiencing a time where a lot more knowledge about identity is being brought to the masses, particularly to younger people. Young people are having more access to information like this, and it's helping them to understand things at a younger age than what we and generations before us had. The increase of visibility and what that does for people.
Exactly. It's silly because it would be like, so we've obviously just gone through this global pandemic, right, with COVID. everybody was online, everybody was sharing this, you wouldn't call COVID a trend. You'd call the use of social media becoming a educational platform and becoming a way for everybody to keep each other updated, for people to learn new information, and it became super accessible, right? And we suddenly all had way more time for it because we were paused. What's happening is there is more time, there is more patience, there is more engagement, and there is more knowledge out there and accessibility. So let the kids cook. Let them go into the kitchen and cook.
Let them cook themselves some snacks.
You're overlooking all of the cases of people who either weren't able to come out because they weren't comfortable or safe to do so, or they either died due to suicide or other mental health reasons. But over time, if you look at left-handedness, that skyrocketed in a similar rate as people became more accepting to it.
I reject that, but
Let me ask you something. If that's the case, if more people are transitioning simply because it's more acceptable, then how can your side also say that there's a transgenocide happening?
Can we define what the transgenocide, I guess, narrative is as raised by her?
I would like her to answer that because she's the one that brought it up.
Yeah, because so we hear people saying simply because legislation is being passed across the country that is banning minors from being able to transition, that automatically means that those children would commit suicide. And that is simply an abusive statement in of itself.
Statistically, a lot of minors who aren't able to transition who would like to do end up.
Why don't we have
That's
this?
not true.
Why don't we
That's
have
simply
this?
not true.
Why don't we have the same
Science is not
suicide rates in the past that if that was the case?
How could we have known that the people who were committing suicide were transgender if they didn't feel safe to come out?
When you look at like members
She ate there.
She got you there, Miss Ma'am. She got you there, Miss Ma'am. That's a really good. I was actually listening to that on both sides, genuinely like, oh, okay. Like, normally I intervene. I'm an intervener, me. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I wasn't listening very openly to both sides and going, okay, they're actually both coming in with different arguments. I only agree with one side of the arguments, but I can't deny that the other side did come prepped. And so I'm naturally going to be on the side that says yes. That's just who I am. I'm liberal. I don't agree with anything that this other side is saying, right? I love the point that she just made here about how do we even know? Because we're becoming way more accepting, people are opening up about who they are. But back then, that wasn't always the case.
The statistics that are used are often very outdated and very harmful because they don't paint a full picture. Like what was being said in this panel, when you have a portion of a community that isn't even able to be identified because they, for instance, died in the closet, we can't then have an accurate number of just how many lives are impacted by transphobia and a lack of education for trans people. The guy that kicked things off, he keeps like gonna chime in, and I'm getting a little annoyed by him.
Once his granddaughter look. I've got to say, because we don't have the statistics, I could see how the other side would argue, but then how do you know it's happening? I think ultimately none of that matters. I think even if one child unalives themselves because of this reason, that's enough. Like, we don't need to give you way more. Like, it's like, oh no, this isn't an issue because enough kids have. What are you talking about? When did lives of children become a debate that literally stood against quantity? When did your basis of your argument become quantity? It matters when more children themselves. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, with an issue like that, one should be too many. We shouldn't be having to wait for it to be an epidemic in order for people that aren't a part of the community to take it seriously.
Children are dying, Kim.
I think, it is just factual that there are more people transitioning or at least coming out, not even just as transgender, but just, within the LGBTQ community as a whole. And so I do see, I think for me, it does become a little bit grayer when you start to say, okay, is that because people are being influenced to transition, or is it because it's more accepting and people are feeling more open and safe about coming out? And I think, when you're in, a friend group or when you, associate with certain people, I think you are likelier to maybe, explore your gender a little bit more.
What do you think about that point? Like, if you're around people who are quite, gender fluid and quite open about the exploration of gender in general, it opens up an avenue in your brain that you wouldn't have even explored if you weren't exposed to friends like this.
I mean, in a way, yes. But I can see how that notion can be twisted in a very negative way. So, to maybe expand a bit on it, it's again talking about the access to information and the access to the knowledge of things that exist outside of a strict binary rule that we've been taught. So if you, live in a small town, let's say, you have a very small, like, graduating class, and you all kind of have the same background. You all kind of, you know, have the same family structure, all those kinds of things. You're all pretty much the same type of, like, person. You all are individuals, but very similar. And you don't have anyone who sort of breaks out of that norm. And then you go to, like, New York City. You're going to have a bit of a culture shock because you're not going to have exposure to a lot of different things that are then present in other areas. But if you were to, like, have, you know, a friend from New York that came to move into that small town, and, like, you became friends and they told you all about the place and everything like that, when you go, it's not that crazy. It's more like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I expect.
Keeping your analogy alive, it would be that New Yorker friend saying, hey, there's this drink that I absolutely love, and, you know, the small towner trying it and absolutely hating it. It's, I can introduce you to absolutely anything, but I can't make you want and enjoy that thing. You know, transgender people existed way before social media was a thing. You know, what about the people who say, I felt this way, but I had no access to anything. I didn't know what to call myself, you know? Of course, they can be exposed to it early, but being exposed to something doesn't mean anything. I've been exposed to things early. I'm not trans. Loads of people have been exposed to things early. You may have been exposed to things early. Are you trans? Like, that's just not how things work. I think exposure to something, I could definitely agree with him. In this generation where we are now, there's definitely more information out there. So naturally, people are becoming exposed to things like the gender topics and gender critical thinking in general a lot younger. But in terms of whether that then pushes someone to transition, I think that's a reach. You can't just make someone trans because somebody knows about what trans is, or everybody would be trans, because at this point everybody knows what trans is. It's such a topic. Why aren't we all trans?
Yeah, I mean, if the existence of something and the knowledge that something exists is all that it takes to be that thing, oh my gosh, I'd be a dinosaur.
Honey, we would be rich.
I know a lot about millionaires. We could be rich, honey. Get me a book. I'm gonna read.
I'd be a serial killer.
Gender dysphoria is a mental illness.
It is a break with reality. I'll start at where I've said before. There are two sexes. It's determined not just by external characteristics, but by chromosomes. When somebody dies and is buried, and 400 years later, if they exhume the body.
I just say I love Samantha Lux's. I love Samantha Lux in general, but when she said, yeah, of course they can dig it up and discover this, then I'll just leave a note that says I'm a trans woman. I was like, what is that as a point? Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
The
Like,
whole-
who are you digging up?
Yeah, it's so outdated, and it's such an annoying argument. Like, it's such a non-issue. Like, the amount of times that I hear this, and, like, as a trans person myself, I'm gonna let you know, I don't care what you think my skeleton is. I do not care. Archaeologists, if you have found this YouTube channel in the year 3040 AD, I don't care.
If you guys don't mind, do you want to share a little bit about your personal experiences with this particular topic?
Yeah, so I didn't even know that trans people existed until I was around like 19, I think. That information never came to me. I'm 25 right now. I didn't really realize I was trans until I was 22, and I started medically transitioning when I was 23. I've experienced depression for most of my life, probably since I was like 13 or so, and a lot of suicidal ideation throughout high school and early in college. But pretty much around the time I had, I guess, felt comfortable with my, like, where I'd gone in transitioning, that had largely decreased pretty much entirely.
And this is what's interesting, because I know when we talk about a lot of this stuff, every transsexual that I know that you know, we started feeling dysphoria around the very time that we became self-aware, around the age of 4 years old. But yeah, I mean, I knew around the age of 4 that there was something different. I wanted to be the opposite sex. I knew I wasn't the opposite sex, but it was something that I wished, you know, I could. I knew that there was something different. And, you know, I tried to dress on it 4 years old and went from there, and then transitioned later in life when, you know, I finally accepted it myself.
One thing that I'm, like, she's losing me a little bit is she's talking about how, like, when she was young, she started to explore her gender from the age of 4, you know, wearing dresses, you know, and I'm assuming, like, that then expanded into other, like, traditionally feminine things and exploring that identity as a girl. This video is about, should minors transition? And in saying that, what do minors do when they transition? Are they going and getting gender reassignment surgery? No.
According to Benjamin and Matt Webb.
According to annoying cis het men that have way too much time on their hands, sure, but according to medical specialists, medical professionals, no, that's not happening. Are they maybe getting a haircut, maybe changing the way they dress, maybe, you know, using different pronouns or a name that's different that affirms them more? Yeah, that's what you're so scared of. That's what's so big and bad and scary, that you're like, oh no, the kid should not do that. You did that, girly. You did that yourself. And now you're living your life as a trans woman, and you think that other kids who felt like you shouldn't feel like they can explore that in the way that you did. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand trans people who have views that take away the rights of other trans people and that take away the ability for other trans people who have had the exact same experience as them. It takes away their ability to like have that.
It always feels like it's trans people who come after them. Like, I had it this hard, so you should have it this hard too. Also, she says that she, you know, was basically socially transitioned when she was 4 years old. At what point was a friend there? At what point was social media there to help her feel those things? Isn't she just a living example out of all these people here? Yeah. Interestingly enough, on the other side of the argument, but here she was 4 years old. Who told her to transition at 4? So like in between playing with like Play-Doh.
The Barbie spoke to her.
You're like, you should be like us. Yeah. Bit odd, but we move.
The medical community is pushing gender transitions for financial gain.
So I disagree. I mean, when I started going through my process of transitioning, I didn't feel pushed by any medical professional at all. There were, in fact, quite the opposite, a lot of hurdles and just like bureaucratic red tape sections I had to like work through. But it's not something that I think, in my experience, was pushed onto me at least.
What are your views? Because we have different views.
Yeah,
we've always had different views on this. Don't hate me. But go on.
Yeah, I don't think that it's being pushed by medical professionals. I mean, anyone who thinks that is the case when it comes to like trans affirming care and stuff like that should have a look at like waiting lists for trans affirming care, because I promise you those are extensive. You know, the process of getting onto treatments and stuff generally is quite long and tedious, as the person was saying in the panel.
So I definitely also just want to distinguish the fact that some countries have free healthcare and some countries don't. Those which have free healthcare, like the UK, will have longer waiting times, of course. And then in America, I can't tell you because I'm not there, but I can speak about the UK. Over here, because we have a public healthcare system, if you then go privatise, things are a lot quicker. For Leo, I did all the admin for it because it was just a lot easier for him to focus on other things whilst I did admin for the transition and so forth, for HRT and so forth. And I personally thought the process was way too quick. We went private because it felt like the quickest option, right? It felt like it was time and it was just necessary. And
I think that the wait times was also a big factor in that decision as well.
Oh yeah, of course, the wait times. And so I could say that potentially private care, I'm not too sure. I don't think the process for Leo getting on HRT was extensive enough. There wasn't anything that really required any like mental health care backgrounds. There wasn't any initial blood tests that needed to be done. It could be done 3 months after. So I definitely think that there are faults in the private system, and because you are paying for a service, those faults maybe go under the radar. But ultimately, I don't think it's completely benefiting off them, but I do think there are definitely some factors and definitely some medical companies that completely are. Absolutely. It's really hard with these cases because ultimately the biggest issue here is that trans healthcare is just far too expensive. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest issue, and it's so hard because it's like, yes, there are companies that are absolutely taking advantage of people who need this healthcare. This healthcare is the antidote to dysphoria, to why people and why children are unaliving themselves, you know what I mean? And it's hard because I want to say, oh yeah, some cases are too fast, but with full knowledge that doing so may push another narrative of, oh, see, she agrees with us, but that's not what I want to do. I think we need to, there's nuance here. there's way more nuance than I can definitely explain anyway. But I think we need to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, some companies definitely do take advantage. But ultimately, the biggest issue is how expensive trans healthcare is. If something saves lives like it is doing, then it shouldn't be as expensive as it is.
It's very true.
Minors should be allowed to medically transition.
Absolutely not. That has not changed for me. We're talking about mental health issues, and there are a whole host of problems that children deal with when they're struggling with identity or gender dysphoria. Let's treat those issues. Let's treat those causes. I have mentioned numerous cases of former trans, kids who were pushed into it, parents who tried to protect their kids.
This guy's obviously talking about minors medically transitioning, and no, I don't think minors should medically transition either. If what they mean is, should minors be able to take puberty blockers? Yes. Should minors be able to socially transition? Yes. But should minors wait before having top surgery and bottom surgery, like is the case? Yes.
Yeah. And that's why medical professionals aren't giving top surgery or bottom surgery or, major operations to children. And, the chemical treatments that he's talking about, as in HRT or hormone the chemical treatments that he's talking about, aka hormone blockers or HRT, those aren't like some big scary like lab rat like chemical experiment that's going on. Like the way he's phrasing it is so fear-mongering and just so like uneducated.
And puberty blockers are completely reversible.
Yeah.
So they're literally just there to help children have the time to decide whether they should medically transition. That should be something you are arguing for. It's a gateway as opposed to, a replacement. It's just pausing time. It's a puberty blocker. Also, puberty blockers have been given to cis children who start their puberty way too young for ages. It's not trans exclusive. It's not making it a trans issue. Puberty blockers are given to cis kids if they need it too. This is ridiculous. Nobody's arguing for children to go actually get these medical procedures done, but no 4-year-olds are getting these done. The only people saying these things are liars.
Yeah, I think you need to, fact check some of your resources here and your references, because the thing with people who have this stance that I notice very, very commonly is that there's always like, 1 or 2 anecdotal stories about like, oh, this person transitioned as a kid and then now they hate their body, or, this parent thought that this is what the kid wanted and then now the kid doesn't want to be this and now they hate their life. And it's like, okay, that is like a horrible situation. And if your facts are actually correct and that is a real situation that's going on in the way you're telling it, that's very tragic. But that doesn't mean that trans kids don't exist as a whole and that trans kids aren't capable of knowing that they're trans as a whole. Nor does it mean that things like puberty blockers and hormone treatments that are age appropriate and, in line with natural puberty, biology, all that kind of stuff, just as it's administered by medical professionals, that doesn't take that away, just because unfortunately there are outliers. We are human beings. There are going to be a range of experiences, but that range doesn't then mean that the majority then get swept under the rug
by the minority.
Yeah.
Like, well, when did the minority statistic make up the rule for everything? Since when? Why is it only happening now for gender healthcare for trans people? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, no one's arguing for children to be medically transitioned, and with the same energy that you're using here to argue that they shouldn't, are you arguing that they should at least be allowed to socially transition, which is the truth? So are you saying that if a child does feel this way, that they can be encouraged to find a more unisex name, change their hairstyles, as long as it's not medical transition, what's actually happening? Yeah, we would love to hear your thoughts. Please do comment below, and whatever you choose to say, just be respectful. If you have a chance, please do hit the subscribe button. We really would appreciate it.
Also, hit the like, and if you love us and you want to support us even more, hit that super like.
Hey, give us that super thanks so we can play our super rank. Drink water. Eat roots. Love you.
Bye.